Tomb of Sargeras. We haven't actually talked about this in a Laps episode. We talked about it on stream, we've talked about it with friends, we've talked about it in lots of different places, but not in a Laps episode.
Yeah, we need to be topical. So
yeah.
We're making a Tomb of Sargeras video.
3 months after we killed it all. Yeah. Next week, talking about Heimel. Get ready for that. That's going to be fun.
Well, you know, it's nice to do these episodes where we sit down and we talk about the instances, especially after we've completed them, so we have sort of like a time capsule. We can look back at them and see exactly what our thoughts were.
Yeah, because normally you'd get caught up, like later on, you'd look back at instances and just go, oh, it was all good, or it was all terrible, or maybe like one thing sticks out, like, oh, I really didn't like that. When, generally speaking, normally your feelings are a little bit more mixed.
Yeah.
You just kind of look at it through normally rose-tinted goggles, like, oh, I absolutely loved
well, that's
Black
a whole
Rock
of
Foundry.
vanilla, isn't it?
Well, yeah, vanilla. But with Black Rock Foundry, for me, I'm just like, oh, I love that instance. Oh, Thogar was so good. Oh, Blackhand was so good. Kind of completely forget about the bosses I don't like. Gruul, the Blast Furnace, like all
that
of those.
boss with like all the animal ads in the stable area.
Oh, Beast Lord Darmak.
Yeah, that one. That was
yeah,
shit.
that wasn't good. But yeah, so I think it would be good for us to get our thoughts down and talk about the instance, especially KJ. I have a lot to say about KJ.
Oh, yeah.
That fight really tears me in two. In fact, like, oh, I really like it, but also there's parts of it that I think are like the worst.
Well, I'm not sure what clickbait title we've gone with today, but KJ is the hardest boss I've ever done.
It's nuts.
For different reasons. It's a different kind of hard. It's a new hard in the game we've never seen before. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? People are really thinking, what the fuck is Loz talking about? We'll explain when we get to KJ, but let's start off. Let's get to the first boss. We've just made a 20-man raid. We just walked in. GOROTH.
Yes, GOROTH. He was all right, but he kind of set a tone, now I'm thinking about it, for the rest of the instance, because on Mythic, it was fine. There was lots of, like, you know, you just kind of have to do the fight well. You might want to kill a couple extra pillars. You know, there wasn't a particular hard comp requirement, but there are 4 things to soak, isn't there? Oh, I wonder if this will reappear. Bastards. But yeah, like that whole mechanic, I'm not even sure if they or they expected people just to do an immune rotation, or they actually wanted people to soak it.
The thing is,
you
only really need 2 people to soak it. It's a bit dangerous to soak it with 2 people.
Especially with other mechanics going on, like pillars getting destroyed and stuff.
Sure, but, I mean, come on.
Everyone soloed it, right?
Pretty much.
And if something goes wrong, there may be 2 or 3 people like go in to help. But
one thing I was surprised with that particular mechanic, the ad spawns is pretty much a wipe.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty brutal for a first boss.
It is an insta-wipe ability.
Pretty much.
Because not only does the ticking damage do a lot,
absurd amounts of damage,
but it removes all the pillars.
Yeah.
So yeah, there isn't like a complete raid wipe
We have
mechanic.
killed the boss before though with the ad up. I'm almost certain we have.
Maybe the
like
boss had like 5% health or something, and you just stacked up and used all your cooldowns.
I mean, this was ages ago, but regardless, first boss
with an insta-kill mechanic. I didn't even think about that. A raid wiping insta-kill.
You can't really say much about him because he is a first boss. I don't think he's... Okay, let's put it this way. He's better than Scorpion and he's better than Knifendra. So
yeah. No, I'd agree with you.
It's already a better start to the instance. Demonic Inquisition.
Now, one thing with Demonic Inquisition that I found quite funny is that when you look at the fight from the outside, you can just be super over the top in terms of what you prepare for it. Or especially on Mythic, like the fact that ads appear when you leave, it's just like, right, so we want to make it so there's a certain amount of ads, a certain amount of time, maybe trying to line it up with cooldowns. We'll be sending in 4 people at 30 seconds, and then at 1 minute, 25 seconds, we're going to send in another 3 people. No.
There was a lot of
There was so much preparation put into that fight by so many of the top-end guilds, and then the first people who killed it was one of the US guilds, like, their name escapes me.
They killed guild, was it?
Yeah, I think so. They killed, like, 5 bosses the first day, and they, like, streamed it all. Watched them kill it, and it was just, like, it was heroic.
They just pulled the boss.
And there were some ads that you kind of dotted up, but otherwise kind of ignored. Yeah, it's actually remarkably simple.
But, I mean, it's a question that's actually popped up on our Discord a couple of times. People asking, like, we're really struggling. How many people should we send in at what point? It's like, just go in if you need to go in. If you don't need to go in, don't go in.
Yeah,
kill the ads when they come out.
The only thing that like is what some guilds are struggling on is that they don't send enough people in a steady flow. That's all.
So they get to like
suddenly 8 people are in, and then they all come out, and then then the ads are a little bit heavy, especially if there's like other raid-wide damage going on. They're either doing the Bonesaw or the Fell School thing. That can like screw you over, but generally speaking, it's, as long as you've got a somewhat of a steady flow, just have the raid leader call out, okay, you 3 go in now. Like whenever it's good, just go in and make sure you drop so we can get some ads out and that kind of thing.
But the fight itself to me very much felt like Heroic Plus.
Yes.
It didn't feel like Mythic.
Just like Nighthold, once again, the early bosses in this instance didn't feel particularly Mythic because, I don't know, like this is just generally a trend that they're doing, and I'm not sure, once again, if I'm particularly happy or like against it. It's just that a lot of the early bosses they want you to get a foothold in there, so they don't make them too complicated.
I think this is an encouragement for more heroic guilds maybe to step into Mythic.
Yeah.
But maybe they need to relook at that curve, because of course afterwards you got Harjatan, which...
Most guilds do Harjatan before Demonic, because Harjatan's
Harjatan's in the same boat. Again, it's heroic plus. There's nothing really that's been added to that fight apart from that there's eggs.
Yeah, so you just got to move the boss around a bit.
You move the boss around, you kill the egg, and then you kill the ads that spawn, ideally not near the boss.
Yeah.
That is Mythic. That's that fight done.
Well, and the thing is, the punishment, strangely enough, the punishment on Harjatan is less than the punishment on GOROTH. With GOROTH, if you muck up the new mechanic, you wipe.
Yeah.
With our first ever Harjatan kill, this was week 1 at like 8 o'clock in the morning, because we decided to do an early raid that day, which was really fun. I enjoyed doing that. We did 1 day raid. It was great. But it was really early, and we killed 2 of the fixate little murlocs under the boss. So the boss immediately gained 2 stacks of enrage on the first set of eggs. So you'd be thinking, oh god, this is it, this is over. We one-shot the fight. And we didn't like play particularly like crazy.
I don't think we even noticed the boss was enraged.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it wasn't working week 1 or something. But yeah, the punishment for mucking up on that fight is nothing in comparison to GOROTH, which I find really strange. Like, yeah, considering this like a later
that particular
boss.
the mechanic on GOROTH, actually, I know we're going like round in fucking circles here.
Yeah.
It is brutal.
It's really brutal.
It is actually
brutal.
brutal.
But in all fairness, you have a lot of time to prepare for it. And they're like normally quite obvious. Like you got like 10 seconds to soak them or something. They always come in at the same time.
And you can guess where they're going to be as well, because they never spawn in the fire. They're always going to be in one of the 3 available corners.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and sometimes they spawn on top of each other, and you just have like one immune class like take 2, like a little Venn diagram of soaking. It's great. So it's like, this is an easy mechanic, but it's so punishing. But the same you can say for Harjatan. It is a pretty easy mechanic to do, unless you've got the colicky tadpole that's like jumping into the boss all the time, which is kind of annoying. But apart from that, it's easy to make it so they're not near the boss when they die. So when you do muck it up, whatever, like the big hit on the raid and the tanks will be taking more damage. That's it. It's just a bit more healing to do. So
not much really happening. Yeah. But to go back to my previous point with the progression line, the curve. The first 3 obviously was like GOROTH was arguably harder than the other ones, but then immediately after that, it's suddenly like, right, welcome to Mythic.
Yes,
because Sisters isn't necessarily the hardest boss ever. I mean, it's not like it's a brick wall necessarily. No, I think we killed it in maybe 10-ish pulls, something like that. I don't think Blizzard were necessarily expecting people to 5 heal it. If they put some sort of damage requirement on it where it felt like you had to 4 heal, then it'd probably be a little bit more difficult. But 5 healing just sort of made the whole fight a little bit trivial, providing people didn't get hit by shit like blades.
Well, the hardest thing of that fight was just as hard on Heroic, except now it's a little bit more punishing. Because the Blade Storm actually does so much damage.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 100% agree with you. And, of course, by adding that extra healer, like one of the difficult fights, because I healed that, didn't I? It was my first little step into Mythic progression healing. It was great fun. It allowed one of the healers to kind of not worry too much about healing the raid and instead heal the spike. Do the spot healing.
Basically Paladin to cover it. Because the tank damage is not particularly high there either. So.
Yeah, so you get the person who's got the rapid shot on them, or the glaive getting thrown at them, or even the moonburns on them, all that kind of stuff. But I did enjoy that fight. I like the fact that there was like quite a few different ways that you could do it.
Yeah.
Because of course you don't want loads of people to be going off across at once. So what you could do, especially if you've got like a melee heavy comp, you can like kind of drag the boss across the room as you go and like send melee across to try and stagger it and all that kind of stuff.
Although I think the strat that we even still use to this day now, and
it's
we told in the guides, I think that's the best way of doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
Staying right in the middle, let the thing come across rather than you running across it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that boss I think was good. Even now while you're in farm, you can still be problematic now and then. I mean, you have to fuck up in order for it to be problematic.
Well, when it starts getting to like 6-7 stacks because people just are extending, or lots of people try and drop at once, that happens.
Yeah. If you've got like, if people have just gone across, you've gone like an explosion of 4 or 5, and then suddenly 2 moonburn comes and they're like, oh shit, I need to drop this, and then they go across.
Yeah.
That's a situation where it gets a little bit panicky. I still think that's like a big problem with some guilds. Instead of just like spot healing the moonburns and just letting them
go when they need to,
people just panic to get across because I don't want to fucking die.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was a good boss, and then of course we moved over to Desolate Host, and this boss was so much more easier than I thought it'd be.
Yeah, I thought that,
everyone, including ourselves, were expecting it to be Gore Fiend. It was going to be really problematic. You're going to have to send people down at the right time. There'll be all matter of different problems with the spears. And just the ads in general. I mean, the scary thing about this encounter was the dungeon journal. That was the hardest part of the fight, getting your head around the dungeon journal, because there are so many different types of ads, all the ads have so many different abilities, and the fact that they interact across realms.
Yeah, it took a while to get your head around it.
It was like, holy shit, this fight is going to be really hard because there's so many things going on. But if you actually just break it down chunk by chunk and actually think of like the fundamentals of the fight and what you really have to do, which was essentially DPS mobs, don't stand in bad shit, break shields at 50%.
It was very much like Heroic, except it's kind of like being in both realms at once because you have to deal with 2 sets of ads.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
And the damage requirement towards the end of the encounter wasn't high enough to make it so you didn't have like not enough people in that particular phase. I mean, yeah, we 3
tanked and 5 healed it.
That shows exactly.
So the boss itself, that might be a way of making it, because of course the strat right now is just to tank some of the upstairs ads out. It's just like, yeah, no, they're not in the fight anymore. You sometimes get some waves going across the room, just dodge them, it's fine. So you completely remove some of the ads, and you have extra healers downstairs just to make it easier, although now on farm people like 2 healing it and stuff like that. So you have like so many things just to make the fight easier, but you're not punished at all by bringing less DPS, because there's not really a DPS check on the fight. The boss does not gain stacks quick enough in the last phase. I think that might have been a way to maybe remedy it if it needs fixing.
That was one of the ways, but the main thing that was sort of in play, really, at least for me, was keeping the realms balanced, because of course in the last phase you can't come out of a realm. Yeah. You have to stay where you are. And of course you've got people being sent up to down because of the spears. Yeah. And if you haven't got the immunities there or anything like that, you're either going to have to sack that person and res them, which keeps them in that realm, or you can send them down into the other realm. But if your damage is low, or the boss has so much health that there is some form of actual serious damage requirement, then that would make that particular mechanic kind of an issue. Because you'd have to try and balance the realms before 30% and say have like 15 people up and 5 down.
Oh, and then send like a group of people down. Like with just the spear, so you can make it more balanced.
Let people naturally go down just because of the spear, but that was never an issue. You could still be 10-10, and people would go down with the spears, and it just don't matter.
Yeah, you could end up being 14-6.
Yeah,
and it's just like, whatever. Yeah,
that's the point I was getting to,
Yeah, 100% agree. And once again, this is one of the fights in the instance, just like GOROTH, where immunities, once again, showing full force with the spears.
The spear,
yeah, because not only did it make it so if you had the spear on you, you can make it so you don't go down at all, depending on your class, but you could help other people. So you only need to send one person to go and help them, and the person that helped stayed up by just using a cloak or using, like if it's on you, you can det it and not go down as well. So the immunities are cropping their head up. You got them on the first boss, you got them on the 5th boss here, and of course later on they go absolutely nuts. That's where you really, really want the immunities. But we'll get to that when we get to that.
And then we come to the first cock block of the instance, the one where, actually, to start off with, people didn't really struggle that much.
As long as you had a Blood Death Knight or 2.
So we come to Mistress, and the first week you could use Death Knights to basically... everyone could just ignore the Hydra shot, and you could just stack Death Knights, and they could stand right in the middle of all the beams. They'd all get hit, they'd absorb all the damage, and then they could just IBF the stun off. And that was huge.
Yeah, it was massive.
I mean, I remember the first week to kill Mistress when we were using that sort of cheese strat. I think we killed it in 80 pulls, something like that, maybe 90 pulls. So it took us a night or 2. And then the next week, when they nerfed it and they made it so the stun was like 20 seconds long, you couldn't remove the stun, no bops, immunities, nothing worked. If you were stunned, you were stunned. Eat it.
Took us like 2.5 days.
It took us so long to re-kill it.
Yeah.
Because we had to essentially relearn the fight, because people now had to stand in the Hydra shots, which means you couldn't have as good uptime on your buffer fish, which meant your DPS was lower, which means you pushed the boss at different times, which means you had to deal with certain abilities at different times, and it just completely fucked everything. And you got to remember the fight from the start.
You got to remember this was during the point where Mistress was at her strongest. She's had a lot of nerfs over the course.
She's had
of
a few.
Mainly,
she had
her health being removed.
Her health was nerfed. I think she had a bit of a damage nerf on the Hydra shot, because the Hydra shot was doing a fucking shit ton of damage. There were, I can't remember the exact guild. It was like floating around that to get the re-kill, they used like 4 shamans. Resto shamans just for the output CDs.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, no,
because the Hydra shots were like that deadly, and obviously with 4 shamans, you have so many different CDs available for every single one. So
probably link every single one, I assume.
Well, I don't think you can necessarily. I think they come in like every 30 seconds or so. I can't remember.
So like 2 of them don't have a link. Oh no, woe is me.
But you just have so many CDs at your disposal that just do actual output.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was rough. It's a sick fight though. I think it's one of the best fights in there.
Well, the thing is that I completely disagree because I think
Really?
the Hydra shot mechanic. Well, when we had our dev interview at Gamescom, I was speaking about this to Ian Hazakostas, about weak auras. That Hydra shot.
Okay.
Hydra shot, that whole mechanic is just, do you have the weak aura? If not, go and get the weak aura.
Or one person's going to randomly die at some point.
It's just too annoying to deal with, yet there's a weak aura out there that completely trivializes it. So that mechanic, although it might be a good mechanic, it's not because weak auras exist. So unless you're going to ban weak auras somehow, which they said they're not going to do, I think that mechanic has no place in the game. Because you can just completely trivialize it.
I can see the argument. I don't know if I necessarily agree. I think you could keep the mechanic but increase the duration of Hydra shot by like 2 seconds to get more leeway for people to actually get in a right beam. So it's actually more balanced rather than just get into a beam as soon as possible.
Yeah, maybe. That'll make it so it's nicer to people who don't have the weak aura, but still, you might as well just get the weak aura.
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
You might not have it in the first couple of weeks because everyone's super secretive about their weak auras, but as soon as, with our guide, we link the weak aura, and I'm sure if you know people in other guilds, you get weak auras from all over the place, just like, oh yeah, don't tell anyone where you got it, and then it's just everywhere suddenly. So that kind of stuff happens. So yeah, I didn't like that part of the fight. I don't like doing the fight now either. I think it's one of the more painful farm bosses, and I know we're about to talk about Maiden, which is very infuriating on farm as well. But Sisters is annoying because there's a mechanic in the fight that makes it so you do a shit ton more damage, but you're punished for using it now because she has much lower health. And if you have 5 people with the fish on the pool, you can't drop the fish by normal means.
Yeah, you have to run in tornadoes.
Yeah, you have to either run in tornadoes, or if you want, you can also kill a fish and then stand in the patch. But the thing is, one of the eels that is, and stand in the patch. But that takes a while to tick, and normally the patches are in the middle of the room where you don't want to have the fish. So that part of it is kind of like, okay, so we got this mechanic which is really fun. You do loads of damage, one person get the fish, because you don't want to push the boss too much, or you have to run into a tornado, and it's just like.
But you don't need to pick up the fish. You could just say,
why is the mechanic there then?
Because for the first 30%, which is phase 1, just don't pick up the fish, and it's solved.
And
for the rest of the fight, you can use it. At least for the rest of the fight, you can just pick up ink to drop it.
Yeah, and I think on progress, the fish were a vital part of it, and there were loads of it was good for progress. That fight was fine in terms of the fish on progress, but on farm, I hate that. I hate it completely.
I see your point. I completely disagree.
I hate it in phase 1. Rest of the fight fine because you can use the oil, but otherwise it's just annoying. You got this cool damage increasing mechanic, but you're kind of punished for using it on Mythic for the first phase. That kind of annoys me.
One thing you can agree with, it's fun to heal.
Oh, it is.
It's one of the more
I've
fun
healed
encounters.
Healed it yesterday on a paladin. That was fun because I don't know what I'm doing with a paladin, but still a good HPS. It's always fun running about. That fight as well was so vicious in terms of some of its overlaps. That's the other thing they nerfed, didn't they? They nerfed the Corvelius cast.
Oh, yeah, they increased the time on it. That was a nerf they really needed to do, though.
Yeah, because some of the overlaps, it was just like, if you're slightly... if you chose the wrong 50-50, then you're in the wrong place and you're dead. You don't have an opportunity to really get out.
If you're stood towards the edges of the room, the chance that you would be right in the middle of the cast would be exceptionally low, but it was possible, right?
Yeah.
So even if you played well by being towards the edges when it was cast, if you was a class that had no speed on your gear, and you had... no forms of movement speed increase, like you didn't have a horse or a ghost wolf or anything like that, you were dead. Well, just for being caught in the middle of it.
There are places around the corners. There are set paths for it.
There are spots where they're safer, yes.
Safer, so you can get towards the edge. But sometimes you can't get to them because, or you could get to them, but you need to play perfectly, which isn't really reasonable.
It was harsh.
It was
unnecessarily harsh. I mean, I remember when we were progressing it, I deliberately played double horse.
Oh no, did you?
Yeah.
No rule of law.
Yeah, well, because it'd be fine to horse 1, but we didn't have any other speed increases apart from 1 raw.
Right.
So we'd use the 1 raw on 1, I'd horse the other, and by the time the next one comes around, we ain't got anything. So I have to horse that again. If if I'm in the middle of it, there's nothing else I can do as a paladin. I'm fucked. Yeah. So I had to play double horse, which I hated.
But yeah, that fight overall is pretty delicate as well, with killing the ads at the right time once again, giving people a damage increase, and then having ads die at a very particular time. It's like they're laughing at people, right? Unlike a Blizzard developer, it's like, oh, look at this giant damage buff, but you can't use it. It's like, why put it in the game then? What is this, Kill the ads too quick, you wipe. Kill the boss too fast, oh, you need to go run into a tornado because you got the fish on you. It's like, well, remove the fish, Blizzard. Just give everyone 10% extra damage on the fight and remove the fish. You bastards.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about Maiden.
I think it's fine. There's nothing wrong with Maiden.
I think it's a really good encounter.
I like it.
I really like it.
Weird. Its place in the instance is because it's so cruel. I get its place in the instance. One fuck up by anyone at any point, not soaking an orb. Fine, you will die. That makes sense. To have it quite late in the instance. Maybe if the orbs were a little bit more forgiving, you could put it way earlier in the instance.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Like, it could... Demonic Inquisition and Maiden could have switched places. Just make Demonic Inquisition stuff matter a little bit more, and you do need to be organised. And just make it so Maiden's orbs, if you miss one, okay, it's a little bit bad, but it's not too bad, you know?
Or if you're, like, the wrong colour and you don't instantly explode.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Put some in there.
Yeah.
But Maiden, I think we were all surprised that it was as easy as it is.
Yeah.
It's not an easy boss, but we were all expecting it to be a ridiculous damage requirement, which it wasn't at all. There is no damage requirement on that boss. Literally is no damage requirement. And we were expecting, to set up people to go soak the orbs to be a lot more difficult than it actually is as well. And I think maybe it was difficult because a lot of guilds, were relying on weak auras. We didn't use weak auras at all for that.
We don't, even now.
We still don't use weak auras.
We
just
tried...
have a single person literally just call out individual players. The gap between the infusion and then actually the boss teleporting away and you having to soak is so long. Yeah. It's like 35, 40 seconds, which gives one person more enough time to look through raid frames and go, okay, you soak that line, you soak that line, you soak that line, and it's like, that's it, done, easy.
Yeah, there are weak auras out there. We did try one, didn't we?
And for one, it was after we
great
finished.
Because it gave you this table chart thing, right? And it's like middle left, and it told you Holy fell, and it looks great from your point of view, but everyone got different ones. Everyone got told different things. I think we got a really early version of it where it wasn't it was bugged or something that particular week, or that was hilarious. Because we did the poll and everyone was just like, why is middle holy going through? And then everyone's blaming each other oh no, you're supposed to be in it, you're supposed to be in it. And it was like, no, the weak aura is just fucked. It was great. That was an amazing 2 polls before we abandoned the weak aura. I healed that fight as well. That is a really good holy priest fight.
Oh yeah, holy priest has god this tier on some of the encounters.
Yeah, not for Fallen Avatar, but everything else it was fine, I would say.
Yeah, it was really good for some of the fights.
Yeah.
Just the way the damage was coming in. But yeah, that encounter I thought was particularly easy in comparison to what I was expecting.
Yeah, but the thing is, although the mechanics in the fight are, as we're saying, it's soaking orbs, it's not particularly difficult, but the reason it's so late in the instance is that one major fuck up, everybody's dead. Or if an orb goes through, you can kind of deal with it. That's one thing I do like about the fight. They could have made it so when an orb goes through, everyone gets unstable soul and you wipe.
Yeah.
They could have done that. But they didn't. They made it so you can recover.
So you have to use a CD.
Yeah, which you were hoping to use on another phase 2 instead, or maybe at a really bad point in phase 1.
That's one thing that I thought was kind of cool, actually, from a healing perspective on that fight. You can kind of do that fight with no CDs.
Yeah,
you don't actually need a CD. See, what was interesting about that is that you can decide where to use the CDs as sort of like a backup. So the way that we assigned it was you use, every single one had 2 CDs assigned for it as you're running around, and then you stack up. But if it's all covered, just sit on them.
Yeah.
And you can use them, there's a point where you get 3 bombs and the tank slam at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And healing everyone at that particular point
can be a bit hectic. Can
sometimes cause the tank to drop a little bit low, or those bombs drop too low. And if you pop a CD there, it completely covers that. So, it allows you to do... That's what I thought was cool.
Well, when I think we killed it our first time, I don't think I used Divine Him. Because it was never called.
Yeah, it was just sit on it.
Yeah,
Maybe
the whole fight, which is super... coming from a DPS point of view, it's I should pop this on the pool. But, you kind of need to... It's quite interesting, because it's a reactive thing. It's just there for when something goes wrong, or when, you need to catch up for some reason. Such as when an orb goes through. If one of them goes through, you can deal with it. I think we've dealt with, 4 going through all at once, because we just okay...
Just pop everything. Fucking CD, yeah.
Which is great for the HPS meters, but yeah, it's a little bit spooky.
Yeah, it is. And we should probably talk about Methods Kill.
Oh yeah, they did the rotato strat, didn't they? That was really interesting.
I think, when we first saw it, I think everyone scratched their heads. They were like, do they honestly think the damage requirement is that high that you need to pick up every single orb?
Yeah.
When in fact, they were told not to solo the slam.
Well, I don't think it was, I think they clarified on this. There was a big post with us talking about their progression and everything like that after they cleared the instance.
I haven't seen this, unfortunately. I probably should have.
Yeah, what they said is that... I think it was more suggested that they don't want you to. That's why we even increase the damage or something. It wasn't do not soak it or you're getting banned. They didn't say that. I think it was more one of the designers, or whoever they were talking to was more yeah, we've tried to make it so you're not gonna do that. And I think Method took that as, oh, we better not do that then.
Yeah, they were just watching their own arse.
Yeah, especially in previous.
That's kind of harsh, though, especially when they're going for world first.
Maybe
they should have some direct contact that just says, yes, do it, or no, don't.
Yeah, maybe it was a bit misdirection. I just said, we don't actually know what went on there. No. But either way, their strat worked, and it was hilarious to watch
cool,
it. It was very cool to watch it. That whole strat where they're constantly moving. If I played a ranged DPS on that fight like a caster, I would have wanted to cry. But the damage requirement, as you said, didn't particularly matter. I think they said, and I probably agree with them, you could go into that fight with 2 DPS dead at the beginning and still do it.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with damage, which is really counterintuitive considering you're looking at the fight, you're getting huge damage increases, you're like, oh god, we've really got to kill the boss. And it's a late boss, damage really matters. Nope. Just pick up the orbs, make sure you get through the shield in time, fine, that's 1 damage check, but honestly, it's not that bad, and then that's it. Just kill it.
And then let's move over towards Avatar, the controversy. This is where it all starts. This is where it all begins. So this boss in itself could quite easily be a last boss, especially in its original form.
Yeah, I think most guilds, like when it was, maybe just after they removed 2 of the blades, even then, most guilds were taking like 300 odd pulls to kill it.
Easily.
Yeah.
And if you look at like typical end boss kills, you usually expect, 200, 300, something like that.
Yeah, or 10 if we're talking about Emerald Nightmare.
If you're talking about Xavius. So, it was brutal boss. I think the nerfs that they've done to it over time
have made it like reasonable, honestly.
I think that its current form is too easy. But that said, I want to make this clear. The next tier is coming out very soon. We're talking like 2 months probably.
Well, Blizzard have been doing this, and I think it is actually good because it helps everyone. They make it so when the bosses come out, sometimes they are too hard. But like in an ideal world for them, I think the bosses when they first come out, the later ones, they'll be hard for Method. They'll be hard for the top like 50 guilds or whatever. And then once people start churning through it, they start cutting away bits and pieces that are slight bullshit, such as having too many blades. There was like, okay, everyone's dying to blades, let's remove 2 of them, which thank God. I hated that mechanic, but now it's all right, you can deal with it quite well. And by the time people maybe the top 100 people start getting there, the boss is in a bit more of a state where maybe they're only raiding 3 days a week. It's still reasonable for them to kill it in a reasonable amount of time, You can kill it within a good amount of time. And then once they get through it, the people in the top, 400, by the time they get to it, it's fine. But the thing is, people in the top 50 aren't like, oh, this boss is way too easy now. It's like, oh, great, this makes our split clears easier. It makes it so we can actually achieve these bosses and get ready for the next tier. So I actually like how that sort of stuff happens. Sometimes it's a bit sad seeing a boss get completely annihilated. Sometimes, you're like, oh, that boss was really difficult.
Siegecrafter,
that boss
Mythic.
Well, the whole of Siege of Orgrimmar or Mythic. You go there and the boss dies in 30 seconds. But yeah, there was... Sometimes it is sad to see a boss get completely annihilated, but I think they've done a good job with Fallen Avatar where there's still a lot of mechanics, you need to still do all your soakings and everything like that, and if you fuck it up, you're dead. But the damage requirement isn't as nutty, there's less things to soak, the blades, there's less blades flat out, last phase they fixed some things with Dark Marks going on healers, all that kind of stuff, so it's a lot more friendly for people to approach now, which I think is good.
Oh, well, the initial state of the boss was horrific.
Yeah, it was.
You instead of having 5 blades, you had 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's 4 at the back, 3 at the front.
Mm-hmm.
Rough as shit. The amount of, I think the first 100 or so pulls is when we were dealing with the 7 blades, and then they nerfed it halfway through our progression. I would say at least 50% of the wipes we would have were people getting hit by double blade because it was seemingly almost impossible not to get hit by a double blade in certain situations.
Yeah.
Of course you could, but it was just rough as shit. Obviously, there were 5 circles to soak. Now there's 4.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really good change. That was a good way of nerfing the boss, I think. I still think that the soak mechanic, we should probably talk about this, especially with the first boss of the next tier being...
Having soaking circles.
Yeah, having soaking circles. It seems to be like a reoccurring theme at the moment.
I want to talk about that before... Yeah, we'll talk about that a bit later.
The soaking circle mechanic, I don't think it's a bad one, but it's just rough, man.
Mm-hmm.
They should make it so pretty much anyone can soak it. Make it so it doesn't do... Yeah, make it so it doesn't even do that much damage. Well, but just make it so if it goes off, it does stupid damage. Well, there are so many other things going on in the fight with people such as have blades, or you're soaking a line, or you're moving with touch... Oh, touch chaos doesn't happen at the same time. But you get my point. There are other things going on in the encounter. Not everyone is available to go and soak that circle. So if you, think on the spot who can go and soak it, that works... That kind of makes it more interesting design-wise.
Oh, I get it. So you're saying basically have initially, let's just say we have the 5 circles, and maybe what you need to do is just get to them. The hard part is getting to them and making sure they're soaked.
Yeah.
And maybe you make it...
Because sometimes, you know, like, other people are actually doing things such as standing in a line. You can't deal with a line and soak the circle at the same time.
What you could do as well, because at the moment, like, talking about soaking,
and
of course,
obviously, if you had the
completely
choice... if you had the choice, then you wouldn't have to assign the melee, well, the rogues to go and do it. Anyone can do it. So therefore, it's more fun for the rogues because they can damage the boss instead of have to go out and soak. And also eliminates the fact that you even need fucking rogues.
Well, the thing is, it was killed without rogues, of course. Well, maybe having one or two.
Yeah, but
the fight was...
And props to those guilds that actually did it without rogues.
But, like, bringing that many rogues to the fight, of course, it's not necessary now at all because, a lot of different classes can do it, and you can, like, because there's only 4 of them, you can even start putting immunities in there if you want to, just from, like, hunters and mages, or maybe even having a group of people stand in it isn't actually
you can have 2 people in it. Well, again, it's kind of similar to
You have
GOROTH.
one tank now, you have a tank do one, and then you have 3 solos. That's how we do it. Normally, it's either DKs or rogues who just go and solo it, and that's fine. That works every single time. But it could definitely be better by having it so the circles, maybe they did true damage, and they brought you to 10% each time.
Yeah, that would actually be pretty cool. If it just
so
makes
it didn't even matter if you have immunities or not. You just send one person into each of the zones. It always brings you to it does 90% of your health, so you need to be topped up. Maybe that'll be a thing that you need to do instead.
Cool. Or maybe while you're stood in the circle, you take ticking damage, and it still does 90% of your health, so you need to go in the last second.
Something like that.
That'd be cool.
That'd be quite interesting. But
instead of like, it does a shit ton of damage. Bring 5 rogues, by the way.
Well, the thing is, rogues weren't only just good for soaking the circles because
they were also broken on the touch of chaos.
Yeah, because the feint worked on it, so they stood still.
Yeah.
You just
it actually applied an extra damage reduction to feint. It was bugged.
Yeah, something was going on where rogues fainted and stood still, and that was it. So it made it so tanks could go where they want. Any other melee DPS that you happen to have, normally you'd only have like 1, maybe more, probably
like
a warrior
or something,
preferably. Yeah. So rogues were just immensely broken on that fight, and that was just purely because of the mechanics. You could solo every single touch Sargeras. You paid 5 rogues to remove that mechanic for everyone else,
and also to carry Dark Marks phase 3.
Exactly.
Phase 2, sorry.
Yeah, so it was, just bring in rogues, make the fight easier, and they
also did shit tons of damage,
and they did really good damage as well. So why wouldn't you? If you could, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And that just led to situations where you had melee DPS that couldn't do those things. Like if you had rep paladins in there, or you had your feral druid or your survival hunter. I don't know. I played for
the shaman. We might as well name the 3 shittest melee DPS.
Windwalker monk. Oh god, am I joking? Well, we're not actually. That's the thing, is that those classes didn't succeed in this tier for the later bosses, although you could bring them. Why would you, if you could have brung someone whose utility is broken for it?
Yeah.
Because the thing is with immunities in this game, they're always like super strong. But like, because it's great, because sometimes if you get something on you, or like you have to solo something, you can. But when the whole fight is full of solo mechanics, that's when you stack immunities, and that's when immunities really become a problem. And that's why Tomb of Sargeras, well, everyone's calling it Tomb of Sargeras, because there's so many soak mechanics and there's so many opportunities for immunities to be overpowered.
Yeah.
Talking very briefly about Antorus, from what we've seen, there's pretty much no mechanics where it's just like, we want to bring lots of immunities.
Also, the fights where you would definitely benefit from immunities, there are mechanics that flat out will always hit you regardless if you're using immunity or not.
Yeah. So
they've deliberately designed the instance so you can't cheese it. Or at least that's what we've gathered with some of our earlier heroic testing.
Yeah, so it feels like immunities are still going to be strong for what they probably should be strong for. Which
is like, oh shit, I'm about to die, I need to use this, otherwise I'm dead.
Yeah,
Rather than I'm going to use this to make this fucking easy as shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people were concerned, like, is Antorus just going to be like a soak fest? By the looks of it, we haven't seen every boss on Mythic. Apart from the first boss, but they come in so often you can't do an immune rotation. And it's the first boss, so who cares?
Yeah.
It's not going to be a problem. So just
at least that's what
we
think.
That's what we think at the moment. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the thing is, by making it so immunities aren't overpowered, more melee DPS get the chance to come in, and same with ranged DPS, arguably as well. Although there's like less, like most ranged DPS have something. Yeah. But like things next tier, like that are going to be overpowered, movement speed increases. So like feral druids, having like a feral druid or 2 might be nice if you haven't got any guardians to just get that bursty AoE movement speed in.
If they can keep up on damage.
If they can keep up, like, of course, I'm kind of ignoring damage sort of thing, because there's no point saying that class is going to do damage or that isn't, because they're changing everything all the time. But with some of the bosses, a lot of CC is actually very good. Talking about ENR, I really don't like that fight. The Lifebinder fight, a lot of CC is needed, interrupts are needed, all that kind of stuff. Movement Like, once again, it's not about the rogue cloaking something. It's about the druid mass entangling. I don't even know if that works. Or knocking back and slowing, all that kind of stuff. You know, they're the things that matter. Which is neat because those sort of utilities haven't really mattered in ages.
Yep.
It's always been about making sure you take no damage. But the thing is, likely, Argus, or the last boss in there, on Mythic, that phase you'll probably want to bring a ton of immune classes anyway.
Yeah, you're probably going to want to bring like 8 rogues. So
you bring 2 tanks. Both of them are paladins, so you have immunity.
Spell warding, need it for the rogues.
And then just bring 14 rogues. There you go. There you go. There's our top tip from the inside.
But yeah, so going back to Avatar, bringing you back down.
Yeah, sorry. I went on a bit of a tangent there.
Apart from obviously all the issues with the encounter initially being so difficult with the fact that you had to bring those. I mean, you didn't have to, but the damage requirement was stupidly tight on the boss, especially in the earlier weeks where, you know, your gear wasn't as high as what it would be now. They did nerf the boss. They reduced his health, and then they reduced his health again to pretty much remove the damage requirements. And now these days it's more, don't be shit at the abilities, actually get to the last phase at the right time, and you'll pretty much kill the boss.
As long as you're doing all right damage, yeah.
As long as your damage is okay, yeah. Whereas before it was, you need to have shit-hot, stupid damage. Obviously, Warrior's really kicking off there as well because of the execute in the last phase as well, because the last phase was so long with the boss having so much health.
Yeah, Shadow Priest
Warriors
as well.
were absolutely insane. Shadow Priest was nice because you could double dot the entire phase. It was just a bit nutty. I think the boss, like what you said, now it's obviously more available to other people. More guilds can actually kill it now, and because it's not necessarily the last boss, I'm not too like hurt about it. But looking at the boss now in comparison to what it once was, it does make me a little bit sad because it was really fun progressing that boss in the way that it was, because it was that difficult, it was that hard, and really it was worthy of being a last boss. If that was the last boss, I wouldn't have been sad at all.
No, I don't think a lot of people would have been.
Yeah, and in ways I kind of wish it was. Because we might as well, let's get to the meat of the video and let's talk about KIL'JAEDEN.
Yeah, so this fight was, and it arguably still is, but like especially was, it's just unbelievably unfair.
Yeah.
It's everything in the fight, if you don't deal with it properly, and they're not particularly hard to deal with, but if you don't deal with it properly,
we should probably make that clear before people get scared and potentially don't want to go and try and do the boss, because it's still worth definitely going and trying and like progress the boss.
Yeah.
It's not hard mechanically. It really isn't hard mechanically.
No.
It's just so unfair.
Yeah.
Everything is really brutal. You get 8, I think it's 8 Armageddons.
6 small, 2 big.
Yeah.
So 8 overall patches.
Yeah. Used to be 10.
10 small, 2 big, I think it was. And it took down to 8 when we killed it, and then it was 6.
And now they've made it so they're less likely to spawn near the edges. Either way, the Armageddon mechanic was horrendously strong.
Yeah.
Again, it was soak. Again, rogues were absolutely insane for it because they could get 2 soaks. And then when the third one comes in, they could cloak, which means the healers didn't have to put up with their debuffs. Also allowed them to double soak.
Yep.
They're just nuts, man.
Oh, and they could even go and soak the tank one and just use cheat death for it.
Yep.
Like, once again, that's a mechanic that, if that was a debuff on a player, then it would be, you wouldn't bring the rogues, would you? Because, like, if it was, like, 2 debuffs on the tank, it's like 2 of the big meteors, and then 6 scattered across the raid, and they're just going to take a burst of damage and a dot afterwards, then you wouldn't have that sort of class stacking sort of deal.
To be honest, I think they really messed up with the Armageddon, because, there was a tank circle, which in its name suggests it's for the tank, and tanks weren't taking it because they couldn't. You either had the boss on you the exact same time, which meant you was the tank that was tanking. Well, what's the other tank doing? Well, he can't do shit because he has 5 stacks of the debuff, which increased the amount of physical damage he's taking.
Yeah.
It just seems like it was designed kind of poorly. It almost seems like it would have been better if they made it so it was like direct melee damage that they take was increased by that dot, so they could still go out there and soak the tank circle.
Right, okay.
So, you rely less on all these immunity classes. I think that would have been better. Whereas these days, people have solved that issue by just 3 tanking the fight because the damage requirement's been reduced so heavily.
Yeah, there's not
3 tanking the fight now makes so much more sense than 2 tanking it.
Yeah,
because you can just have 1 tank that's constantly dealing with at least one of the circles. He can do the circle every single time,
and then you have 1 immune,
and then you just have 1 immune class every other
the other
one.
tank during the intermission,
or a tank during the intermission. I feel like they should have maybe designed it in a better way so that the tank that was doing nothing could still go and soak it.
Well, and the thing is with the Armageddon, right, is that on Heroic, if you don't soak and like you miss 1, that debuff that you get, you can just deal with it, right?
Yeah,
barely.
If you pop a big CD,
Yeah.
and you grab people early, then yeah, you can out-heal it. Yeah.
But the thing is, on Mythic, I don't see why that dot's even there. It
Yeah.
should just say, you die.
Yeah.
Because, like, unless... Did they want that dot to be... Like, can you survive? That whole mechanic is... If you fuck it up, that's
if it goes off, about like 50% of your raid will just die flat out from the initial damage, and then everyone else that's left just dies from the dot.
Like, maybe if they remove the initial damage of it hitting the floor and instead put a big dot on everyone, maybe you'll be able to healing cooldown for it. But considering half your raid dies immediately anyway, what's the point? Why not just have everyone die immediately?
Yeah, so this is our problem with the fight, basically. This is why we think this is the hardest boss ever, is because... there are so many aspects of it that are just unfair.
Yeah.
Armageddon is a really big case of it. There's no way of you coming back into the fight. They could have designed it in so many different ways. Like you said, they could have made it so there was no initial damage and instead it's a dot forcing your healers to heal it.
Yeah.
Make it so the dot will kill you if you don't use a healing cooldown. So,
and that screws you for later.
And that screws you for later, but potentially you might still be able to get through it. So at least you can come back from it. And it's a 14-minute long fight.
And there's so many of them
and
to do.
there's so many of you for you to actually go and soak. At least give people the opportunity to come back from it. What you could have done is make it so the initial hit was slightly less, and instead of putting like a dot, make it a massive healing absorb shield.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you could do that.
Or make it so maybe people receive 50% less healing or something. I don't know. Make it so it doesn't just instantly kill you. It's lame.
Yeah, it
There's
was.
no way coming back. It's just lame. When you wipe this, oh, for fuck's sake, what clown didn't fucking soak now?
Yeah, who moved out of it or whatever, you know?
It's just...
And over the course of a 13-odd minute long fight, although you're only dealing with it for like 8 minutes or something, the actual debuff, or is it like 9 minutes, something like that, it's still awful to deal with. It's not... Like, the mechanic would... The thing is, Armageddon would be fine if that was the only one-shot horrible mechanic in the fight. The thing is that it wasn't. Fair enough. If they want a mechanic in a fight that makes it so you just die when you screw it up, fine. And even if you have to deal with it throughout the whole fight, fine. But don't stack 5 of them on top of each other, you know? Moving on, like, even to the DPS ads, right?
This is the best example.
Yeah, the DPS,
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah, the DPS ads, they need to be spread 20 yards on Mythic, because if they're stacked on top of each other, not only do they give each other the damage buff, but when one of them dies, the other two get healed up to 100% health. So they need to be 20 yards apart. But the thing
they
is,
deal significantly more damage.
They do so much more damage. So say if they are like 1 yard too close to each other, so two are like 19 yards apart rather than 20 yards apart, there's no way of coming back. It is a wipe because of that heal.
Yeah, it's so dumb. And the thing is, there's such an easy fix to solve that issue. You don't have these... I wouldn't say we had loads of wipes where the healing ads were too close. It wasn't like the main thing that wiped us. I'm pretty sure Armageddon was.
Yeah, the DPS ads even, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the DPS ads. But it was still a thing that happened. Yeah. It happened at least, I don't know, fuck this number out my ass, probably 20, 30 times. They were too close. And especially when it's the second set of DPS ads and you're that far into the fight, it's a really annoying thing to wipe to. Yeah. So, you know, you could say, well, just move really far away from the boss, but that's not. It doesn't work like that. You can't do that. You still need to be able to, like, at least starfall all of them. So why didn't they just design it in such a way that, sure, they have to be 20 yards apart just for the stack, but why not make it so the heal was 10 yards?
Well, if
you made it so the heal was only 10 yards, then if you didn't have a perfect 20-yard spread, sure, you're going to have to deal with the extra damage because they're too close, but at least they're not going to heal each other when you fucked up.
What you could do is make the heals scale depending on how close they are to each other as well. So maybe if they're within like 19 yards as an example, when one of them dies, it heals the other ones for 10%.
Rather than 100%.
Or maybe even 25%. But that 25% you can get back from it, even though that ad is doing a ginormous amount of damage. Once again, lob one more healing cooldown onto it, use your health pots, or maybe use your prolonged powers at that point when you don't want to, but you can get through it and maybe squeeze through other parts of the fight. But there, no. If they're too close, they die. And yeah, of course, you still want to stop people completely stacking them. So say if they are within 10 yards, yes, of course, they'll heal for 100%. You screwed that up really badly. But when it's something fiddly, like literally 1 yard, because you do need them to be close to the boss. You want your ignites to be spreading. You want to be able to sidewinders them all. You want to be able to starfall them. They want to be as close as possible, but you still need to have them at that set point. It's fiddly and really unforgiving. But once again, if that was the only mechanic that was really unforgiving, it'd be fine. Because it's like, okay, well, look, you get used to it, fine, that you'll get through the fight. But no, you got the Armageddon on top of it. And you have the Rupturing Singularity on top of it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Rupturing Singularity. So initially in Phase 1, that was supposed to be where the DPS check was. You had to kill the new tank ad as soon as possible, literally as soon as it spawned. Yeah. The idea was to pop your 3 minutes and just kill it instantly, because the time between that first ad spawning and the Singularity was, like, tiny.
It's really tight.
But instead, use a Warlock Gateway or use an immunity and no one has to get knocked off, and that way you have way more time to deal with that that healing ad, and then the next rupturing singularity that comes in just so happens to be at an edge anyway. So you don't even need to use the tank dispel, but you can do anyway.
Yeah, you soak the meteors and then get all grouped up together, which is a good
yeah.
way of starting the phase.
Yeah, so... and then, of course, there was a problem as well afterwards that the damage requirement just in general for that first phase, before you got the second set of DPS ads, was really high anyway.
It was quite tight, yeah.
So to save CDs just for that ad wasn't really viable. Because you had to use them on the boss and the pool just to get through the phase before the second set of DPS ads where you had nothing. So, you know, that phase, it was just, again, that was just rough. It was just harsh almost for, like, no reason.
Yeah.
It could have been designed a little bit better, where you still have to deal with all these mechanics, but it's less stupid and less reliant on classes to, you know, use immunities or have a warlock because you have to have a gateway, or be a goblin because you need the fucking.
You used to have to be a goblin during the dark phase. They've made it so because of course during the dark phase you get the rupturing singularities, and they used to be in random corners. So you of course, I guess they expected you to go scouting out to find out where they were.
That's what they wanted you to do. They wanted you to have
like 1 or 2 people scouting or whatever.
Scout
like
corners, yeah. So you'd cover 3 corners.
Yeah.
And if they don't find it, well, then it's, you know, it's in the 4th corner.
But of course, nobody did that because you were too busy doing other things.
That would have been fine if they did want you to do that. But the thing is, you had one knockback, and then you had another knockback like 8 seconds later. So what, you expect those people to go back in that corner to check again and then get back in time ready for the knockback? It's just harsh.
It's really harsh.
just so fucking harsh.
But they made it come from set corners.
Yeah, now it comes from set corners, so you know exactly where it's coming from.
You gated one and then you soloed the other. So whether that's an immunity or a rocket jump or anything.
Basically, everyone in the raid had to have something in order to deal with that particular thing.
Yeah.
But of course, if someone hit the gateway too early,
they're dead. They're
flying off. Yep. You hit too late, you're flying off. And the gap to actually click on the gateway is roughly 0.5 seconds, about half a second. Maybe a little bit more, maybe up to 0.7. But it's a tight window, especially there's other things going on. There's people low. I mean, it's off the GCD that you can hear, I guess. But there's all this other shit going on. It's stressful.
Yeah, it is.
It's hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
It's very, like the whole fight, basically. Like, none of the mechanics, as we've been saying, are particularly difficult to deal with. It's just when you start stacking them all on top of each other, fail one Armageddon soak, you're dead. Fail putting the ads like in the right places, you're dead. Fail killing the tank ad at the right time, you're dead. Fail dispelling at the right time, you're dead. Fail standing in the wrong corner at certain points, you're dead. There's no, and the thing is, by you're dead, normally that means the entire raid is dead.
Yeah, there's not really any mechanics that targets a single player that can kill you. There's like bursting Dread Flame that can potentially kill you if you're not topped. But typically, if everything is just like, yeah, your raid's dead, fuck you.
Yeah,
for 14 minutes.
In my opinion, a better way of doing that would be, instead of saying your raid's dead, fuck you, it's your raid is going to die very soon if you don't do something about this.
Yeah.
You know? Maybe make it so when the Armageddon, if you failed to do that, an ad spawned and you needed to like use a bunch of resources to kill that ad, otherwise you're all gonna die or something like that. You know, give us a way of coming back, because otherwise you spend 600 odd pulls on average for quite a lot of
Well, I mean, that's another way. That's probably another thing to help with our point.
Yeah.
With like saying that this is the hardest boss ever. Look at the pull counts.
Yeah.
Look at the pull counts.
Method somehow did it in like under 700 pulls,
which is remarkable considering they're the fucking pioneers.
Yeah. Then you had Exhaustus doing it just under 1,000. There was one of the
Alpha.
It was Alpha. It was one of the Asian realm guilds. Took like 1.7 thousand pulls to kill it.
Fucking crazy.
I think most on average.
I think Alpha was like 1,300, but regardless.
Yeah, like there was some crazy pull counts, and most people when they killed it before its form now, but before they did the big nerfs in 7.3, average I would say over 400, maybe over 500.
Yeah, well we were like 650-ish.
Yeah, 6.2 something I think, or something like that.
Over 600 anyway.
And then you look.
But
back,
we had a nerf though.
Yeah, we had well, everyone had some of the nerfs.
Because Method killed it, then Exhaustus killed it, and then immediately they nerfed it.
Yeah.
I think they reduced the boss's health by 5%.
Something like that,
and they reduced the amount of Armageddon circles, I believe.
Something.
They went from 10 to 8, or whatever it was. And then they left the boss as it was for ages.
Yeah.
And then I think about 50 guilds maybe killed it, and then suddenly that's when they brought in the recent nerfs. Well, I say recent, they kicked in like 3 weeks ago. Guide for this boss, by the way, is coming out soon.
Yeah.
So many people are asking us, it's coming. We've got footage for it. We're ready to go. So that will be coming.
Going back to the pull count thing though, although they're really high, for people who don't know, looking back at the other like pull counts for the last bosses in this expansion, like Nighthold for Gul'dan, it was normally around 300 to 400 pulls, which is
I would say less than that.
yeah, out at the high end.
Oh, the high end. Sorry. Okay, yeah.
And that's similar to what Fallen Avatar was, right? So
Yeah.
for Helio and Trial of Valor, that was like 200 to 300 ish.
Something like that. Yeah.
Xavius, of course, was like 10 from like everyone because they fucked that up. And then you look at this boss, average like 600. Like it was very, very, very cruel.
I don't remember a boss that's taken that many pulls to kill it. Is pull counts a good sort of indication of how difficult a boss is?
It's a indication. The
I
thing
think it
is, there's lots of different. We've talked about difficulty in the game before. Like, is the game getting easier? Is the game getting harder? And there's so many different forms of difficulty. I think mechanically wise and cruelty wise and unfairness wise, this has to be very high up on the list of bosses.
Mechanically, it's not the hardest.
Yeah, sorry, in terms of.
But in terms of how unfair the mechanics are,
that's what I more meant.
and how cruel the fight is, then yeah, it is definitely one of the hardest, if not the hardest. It's just rough, man.
It is rough.
It really is rough.
But
and
in its current
the
state,
thing is, did you dislike it?
No. But
I actually
was
liked
sat
it.
out for 200 of the pools.
Yeah,
so
you was,
I got through the whole of phase 2 by getting carried a little bit, which is great for me. Do have to learn.
Well, phase 2 is kind of easy anyway, really. Like phase 2 is like one of the.
It's the ads in phase 2.
Yeah,
was
that's
like
the hard
stumbling
point.
block, wasn't
Yeah,
it? And then
that's
once
the
you
hard
got through
point.
that, it was like easy.
Yeah.
I actually really like that.
Well,
fight.
it's easy until dark phase, like a minute later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did enjoy the fight. It annoyed me in lots of ways, but I still.
Well, it
thought
annoyed
was a good
everyone
fight.
because it's so obvious when someone fails.
Yeah,
They go flying off the platform. You fucking idiot. Why are you flying off? You didn't soak the Armageddon. You're a dick.
Yeah, 100%. It does actually make a toxic guild environment.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that our guild was particularly vicious or anything.
I think it was particularly good on KJ.
Yeah, I actually do as well.
I was kind of
but
surprised.
Like listening to lots of other guilds progress it, like on Twitch and stuff, when they have their guild team speak for everyone to listen to, people get so angry. They get so annoyed, and I can see why. The fight makes you toxic because you can see when people fuck up. And the thing is, you're an idiot. You fell off, and the next pull you do the same, and then you're silent for the rest of the night because you don't want to say a word. I did that so many times.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh god, seriously, can we stop making these mistakes? And then you fuck up. It's the worst feeling, man, ever. Oh god. But no, I got to say that I did enjoy my time with KJ.
And
I
think
was very cruel though.
I think the last phase was maybe a little bit underwhelming. And again, there was almost like an added. It sort of adds to our point of how it's maybe a little bit unfair. How sometimes you could get certain locations with the what they called the pillar obelisks. Yeah. There we go. Sometimes because they do spawn in like random locations. Obviously, there is set locations where they can spawn in, but they will spawn randomly within those locations. Sometimes you just get dicked. Like if the rift is on the right hand side of the room, and you have obelisks on the left hand side of the room covering the entire left hand side of the room, the space that you have to stand in is so small.
Yeah, like there is always a safe spot.
There's always a safe spot.
But
always
finding the safe spot sometimes is a lot,
especially towards the end of the encounter.
Yeah, sometimes it's a lot easier. Sometimes it's a lot harder. They also nerfed the amount of obelisks in that phase as well to make it more bearable.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
didn't even know that.
They started with less. I think it starts with 3 now, and it used to start with 4 or maybe 5. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Hell.
We should have really got the patch notes for these bosses. We're probably completely wrong. It started with 8. Who knows? But yeah, that fight was nuts. The last phase, though, I think is suitably, like, it is tense because you remember we complained about this in Nighthold that Magistrix last phase when you got to 10%. Oh god, this is boring. It's just gonna die. Gul'dan, when you got to that point where he took
the second bombs have gone off.
Yeah, the second bombs have gone off, and you actually in the CC point, the fight's over.
Yeah.
This was not over until he died.
Yeah.
It was. That's
one of the things that's
and
really
one thing
good
with
about this
Fallen
boss.
Avatar as well. This whole instance with the later bosses, at least, they actually went somewhere in terms of the intensity.
Mm-hmm.
There was nerd screams because you didn't know
for almost the first time this expansion.
Yeah, you didn't know that the boss was going to die until he fell over.
Yeah,
because anything could still go wrong, and at that point you had no way of fixing it. Fallen Avatar, you was on one tiny little square, you're trying to kill him. KIL'JAEDEN, like 20 obelisks spawned, and you're like, just kill him before they explode. You know, that stuff is great. I think that one thing I've got to say is good is that.
Yeah, I mean, have we already said this? We'll say it again. It's a good fight.
It is.
It really is a good fight. I actually really, really enjoy the encounter. It's just, it could have been designed a little bit more fairly to maybe remove some of the more painful wipes.
Just don't insta-kill us. Let us try and get back. If one person makes one mistake, let us try as a raid to fix it. We didn't get that.
I mean, that's not to say that like we should probably clear that up as well. That's not to say that insta-kill mechanics are bad. But when there's five of them, yeah. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Like, mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, this a little bit more relaxed.
No show notes.
Yeah, we have nothing. We're just sitting here talking.
Normally we have show notes.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, then do drop us down a like. It helps us out a lot. And we shall see you all in the next episode. And before we do go, all the PTR shit's coming.
Yep, and we have the KJ guide, as you said.
Yeah, the KJ guide as well. We have previews for absolutely every single boss on Heroic. That's all coming very, very soon. So watch out on the channel. Streams coming as well. Check us out on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter to let us know when shit's going on. And before we do go, as always, a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon.
You guys are fantastic.
You are
Thank you
indeed.
so much.
And we shall see you all in the next episode.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.